Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to welcome our headline speaker for the event today, and he's none other than Mr. Stephen Lee. Stephen Lee is the CEO of OMD Asia Pacific, leveraging over 2 decades of experience in fostering strong client partnership, driving digital growth, evangelizing creativity, and inspiring teams. Mr. Lee leads a network of over 2,700 OMD employees in 28 offices across 17 markets in Asia Pacific, managing upwards of $6 billion in marketing investments for many of the world's most prolific brands, including Apple, McDonald's, and Nissan. Throughout the career, Mr. Lee has established a track record of delivering profitability, efficiency, and building a culture of positive change within the industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's give it up to Mr. Stephen Lee, who will set the stage for the event ahead, deconstructing not just our larger theme, creativity first, brand engagement in the connected era, but also decoding the spice of realigning the creative world. So a huge and a warm welcome to Stephen Lee, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to put this down. Hopefully I don't spill it. Good afternoon. Do you know what? I don't think I've ever been introduced quite so fulsomely as today. I think I've just counted, I think my name was mentioned already about 10 times before I even get up on stage. And the fact that I'm tall has, I think, been referenced more than I care to remember. So the fact that I'm standing on this stage right now probably makes me about 10 or 12 feet tall, which is quite bizarre at the best of times. So bear with me. I may well sneak down and be tall amongst you at some point in this, so bear with that as well. Reigniting, forget about what it says on the screen. Creativity is not about reigniting anything. It's not about sparking anything. I'll come back to that in a moment. But I think it's interesting because when I stand up on a stage like this, in front of an audience like this, the first thought I have in my mind is, I feel a bit of a fraud. Because ultimately, yes, I was introduced as this person who runs this big business, all of these people, all of these billings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the people I'm looking at in the room today, you are the ladies and the gents who are actually doing the work that actually is meaningful, that makes a difference to clients' lives, that hopefully consumers want to engage with. So I think, for me, an occasion like this is as much about what I can gain and learn from you guys as hopefully anything I can impart to you. So feel free at any point in the process, and I see a few familiar faces, so I'm slightly wary when I say this, do kind of shout out with questions, points of view at any point in time. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, and there's no need to kind of wait in hushed silence for some moments of inspired brilliance from me, because honestly, it may never come. So let's have a conversation. Let's kind of be candid and open about this, because ultimately, that's the business we're in, right? We're in a business when we talk about creativity, advertising, media. What sits at the heart of it all? It sits at the heart of the fact that we are people who hopefully are curious. We're people who actually want to have conversations, who want to spark off each other. And fundamentally, I think that begins also from the fact that we're people who are believers. I'm an old guy now. I'm an old man. I need to have my crib notes because the memory does not serve me quite as well as it once did. But the fact is, no matter how long you're in this business, no matter how old one gets, I like to believe that ultimately we still do believe in this business, what we do. I've used the word believe more times than I care to remember already in the first 3 minutes. But I think we do need to be believers. We need to believe in that which we do. We need to believe in the world that's around us. I believe in many things. People say that I'm overly optimistic, but I believe in many, many things. I believe that as a father, as a parent, that ultimately, as all parents should, that we'll learn more from our kids and we'll give to them. I believe that as people who are senior people in companies, agencies, that we learn more from those people who work for us than we could ever hope to teach them. I believe in the restorative power of a beer at the end of a long day. I believe in Virat Kohli's cover drive. I definitely believe in creativity, which is an odd thing. A lot of people say, media guys, what the hell are you doing talking about creativity? Why have we got a conclave here where the keynote subject is creativity, and you've got myself and my old friend Stephen Allen, who are two media guys, standing up here talking to you about creativity. What the hell do we know about creativity? We don't write ads. We're not copywriters. We're not art directors. We're not film directors. What do we know about creativity? Well, I won't steal Stephen's thunder. I'm sure he'll give you his definition. My definition of creativity is how we make a difference. To this point of sparking, how does everything that we do make a difference to the people that we're hopefully trying to communicate with? That, to me, sits at the heart of what creativity means. And creativity has evolved. As I say, I've been in this business for a long time. And I started out back in the day when there was no such thing as media agencies and ad agencies. It was just agencies. And I was unashamedly one of those suits who would sit in the corner, think he was terribly strategic, terribly creative, relegate the media guys at the end of the meeting and say, okay, well, you know what, you got 10 minutes now for your pile of acetates, come up and talk a few media plans, but that's not what really clients are interested in. Clients are interested in seeing ads and storyboards, and they want to actually hear about strategy and what does media do to inform strategy. That was me, and that was me when I first started coming to India 20 plus years ago, working with an agency called Lowe. That was the way that I believed the world worked. But in many ways, the fact that we are now in a more data-rich, tech-rich environment, that we are as an industry a lot more data-led, rather than have that be the death of creativity, rather than have that be something which, and I remember Martin Sorrell, God bless him, Martin Sorrell once said that, you know, we're leaving the age of madmen and entering the age of mathmen. That actually those crazy people who drank whiskey and smoked cigarettes, God bless them, no longer had a place in this world because actually it was all about people in media agencies and data jockeys who could actually, you know, really be able to go in there and sell through fact, metrics, information, KPIs, as opposed to inspiring through creativity. I don't actually believe that there is that line drawn. I don't believe it's as clear and black and white as that. In fact, I go back to something and go back to kind of my early days in this industry. Something that a creative director that I worked with told me once. He said, you know what, Stephen? If anyone tells you that creativity exists by thinking outside the box, tell them they're wrong and leave the room. And I said, tell me more, what do you mean by that? But his definition of it has really stuck with me. And I totally agree with everything that he said. Because creativity outside the box, thinking outside the box, we love to use that phrase. Come on, guys, think outside the box. Be creative. You know what? Being outside the box is easy. Being outside the box, there are no rules. There are no regulations. You can write what you want, say what you want, because ultimately, you know, you're outside the box. You're not constrained by parameters. It's also not realistic. That's not the world that we live in. The creativity that I've always looked for is creativity within the box. How can you be creative in the context of a tight brief, a tight budget, in the context of knowing what will and will not move your consumers and your audience, within the context of what data tells you are the rights and wrongs of what you should be doing? How can you, when you've got so many supposed parameters around you, still become as creative as you can be? And I think that was hard for a long, long time. It was a hard thing. It was the reason why so many ads were rejected. So many, you know, agencies would fall out with clients was because of the fact that they'd be in one space, the client would be in the other. And a lot of those decisions became quite personally biased and became quite judgmental and very subjective. And I think what the power of the world that we live in today, with data, with the kind of data signals that we can feed upon, with the fact that we do have technology informing what we do, we are able to be a lot more creative within that box. We are able to be a lot more focused, a lot more pointed in how we bring creativity to life. Great example of this, and I will intersperse this with a few videos and case studies because, let's face it, nobody, including myself, can stand to listen to me talk for half an hour non-stop, not even my mother, who loves me dearly. So a great example of how data helps to inform really great creativity is an example from Singapore, something that actually we did at OMD, and this is not all about OMD case studies. There'll be other things that I'll show later on. But this I thought was really pertinent, because at the end of the day, creativity to me, for all that I've said, I can also sum up in three things. Creativity is about imagination, which was referenced earlier on in terms of the Einstein quote. It's about innovation, and it's about really then invention. How can you imaginatively and innovatively invent? But that doesn't mean pie-in-the-sky ideas that just look good. That means actually actively problem solving. How are we innovatively and imaginatively solving problems? And with this case study, you'll see how something which was a real business problem for McDonald's, through the application of rigor and data signals, turned into a really creative problem solve.
You know when you want food delivered, but it's going to take ages to arrive? Or even worse, can't be delivered to you at all? And you're like, I'm never ordering from these people again. Well, McDonald's does. There are so many options for food delivery in Singapore, and we know that if McDonald's doesn't get your order, someone else will. So here's what we did. All across Singapore, customer delivery time constantly increases and decreases dependent on the capacity of the restaurant and its drivers. In a global Google first, we split Singapore into 26 delivery neighbourhoods, which were mapped to Google's hyperlocal neighbourhoods. Real-time customer wait times were passed straight from the McDonald's restaurants into our advertising delivery system via an API. Now here comes the smart bit. This system would update every 5 minutes and let us know which neighbourhoods could handle more orders and which ones were maxed out. We then created rules to dynamically adapt our advertising approach in each scenario. These rules were baked into a custom-built script which enabled real-time decision-making. With this system in place, we were able to stop wasting ad dollars on customers whose orders couldn't be fulfilled, and instead shifted investment dynamically to areas with low wait times, making more happy customers. The system is now ready to be implemented across the globe in all McDelivery markets, all from the efforts on our little red dot.
So a really creative solution to a really pointed business challenge that a client had, and that to me sits at the heart of how creativity has evolved and needs to continue to evolve. But at the end of the day, it's still quite functional. I'm the first to admit that that's the work of my guys at my agency. Won lots of awards, was the most awarded campaign, I think, in 2018, globally, blah, blah, blah. It's still about a very functional solution to a functional problem. And we've got to be careful that in this world of data and tech and algorithms, that we don't go down that path of simply thinking that every solution has to be, however smart it is, a very smart data-led functional solution to only today's challenges. Because that only attacks one part of the funnel, and the lowest part of that funnel, a very important part, that kind of last stride towards actual conversion and actual purchase, but still only one part. So what is it that we're doing? How are we thinking about the challenge of creativity? How are we thinking about going beyond creativity to lift it beyond that? This lady here, I don't know how many of you know her, Maya Angelou, one of my abiding heroines of really the 20th century. Civil rights activist, writer. This lady has, she was a strong, vocal black lady when actually being a strong, vocal black lady was far from trendy. And she had to ignite every single spark of her creativity to bring her voice to the world, to bring her message to the world. This is not me doing a sell on Maya Angelou, though for those of you who have not read her books, I would recommend you do rush out and do buy her books and read them because they are amazing. But more importantly, at the heart of how she became who she was a fundamental belief in this. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I put that in here because I think that is a crucial aspect of what I'm talking about. That marrying of the yin and yang, if you will, of being able to actually deliver the right kind of engaging, creative message, but at the same time have that be informed by a really clear sense of what is it behind this message. That someone isn't going to just hear it and forget about it tomorrow. That someone's going to actually feel something, want to be engaged with this message or with this brand. And brand engagement is something that we talk a lot about. We throw that phrase around in our business like it's going out of fashion. We talk to clients every day. It's like, how am I going to make your brand more engaging to consumers? And clients saying, wow, yes, how are you going to do that? Astonish me with your intelligence. But the questions actually should go way before that. Before we can even have a hope of helping people, messages, to engage and to really have a meaningful impact on people's lives, we have to understand those people's lives better. In agencies, we talk a lot about insights. We are the insights merchants. What do we do as advertising and media agencies? We look consumers in the eye, we understand them, we say, yes, I have got this insightful point of view on you or about you. What am I really saying? What am I really actually doing? It's so much better down here. Looking at bright lights there. It's not about looking up. It's much better being down here. I can actually see your faces. What are we doing when we talk about consumer insights? Most of the time, all we're really doing is digging out those old insights or the same studies. Everybody can go to a Nielsen and a McKinsey. Everybody can go to a Ray Morgan, whoever it may be. And we can all say, well, no, because I am Omnicom and you're WPP, we have a different point of view on this data. Bullshit, I'm sorry, but we're still working off the same set of information. We're at best nuancing across it. How then do we actually become more engaging with consumers? How am I able to stand here and look at you and say, let's have a conversation? This is not me talking to you. This is not me talking at you, it's me talking to you. And let's hope we get some response back by hopefully being a little bit more empathetic. Now, empathy is a word that whenever I talk about this, there are those of us who will roll their eyes and go, oh my God, he's disappearing into wishy-washy land. What does he mean by empathy? We're not here in a Bible study group. We're here trying to sell products. We're here trying to drive real return on investment. What the hell is empathy going to do with any of this? Well, I'll tell you, at OMD, we fundamentally believe that at the heart of any work that we do for any client, it has to begin with an understanding of empathy. It has to begin with the fact that, again, as I said earlier, it's not just about taking the same information that everybody has and trying to rehash it in a different way. How do we really get under the skin of consumers? How do we really try to understand what is it that makes her tick? Do we ever? And there's to the point made earlier, a lot of guys sitting in this room, a lot of men sitting in this room, and a lot of us are probably involved with products like washing powder, like children's diapers. Now, that is not an exclusive place for women only. Men, obviously, should be washing dishes, washing diapers, of course. But how do we really walk in the shoes of the people who are the people we're talking to? Do we really understand what is it that they are going through? Do we understand at what point in the day, never mind when they're in a supermarket, before they even get there, do we understand what point in the day they're worried about their children? At what point in the day they're actually thinking, I want the best for my children? Because let's face it, those of us who are parents, we'd love to think we are 24/7 concerned about our kids. We're kind of not. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that seeps into our day. But at that point in the day when we're focused on our kids, when I'm thinking, oh my God, my daughter is the most important person, which of course she is 24/7, but at that point in the day when I'm thinking about it, that's when I want to hear a message that says, okay, this is why I want to talk to you now about this particular product, service, whatever it may be. Much easier for me to say than to do. But I think, being able to have empathetic insights to us at OMD really revolves around 4 key areas: culture, tribes, content, context. I'm already running over time, so I'm not going to talk about all these things. It was never my intention to. In some ways, they're self-explanatory. Obviously, when we talk about content and context, content these days is very much, I don't mean just the content in terms of what you see. I'm talking about content in terms of being able to really measure emotional response. How do we use content to try and get under the skin of a person's EQ? When I talk about context, Again, it's not just about placing the right ad in the right place. How are we really understanding those metadata signals? We've got a better sense of how to best utilize the context that's around us. But the two I'm going to focus on a bit more today is culture and tribes, because I think that is actually the most interesting two aspects of how we approach empathetic insights when it comes to this topic of creativity. Culture. Culture is something that we all think we know. People will talk to us and we'll say, well, yes, I understand the culture in which I live. I understand the culture that I'm from. I understand the culture that my parents and my forefathers have given to me. The world has moved on. The world is no longer only about the context of the fact that I happen to be Chinese, you happen to be Indian. It's not as simple as that. Culture these days, in this dynamic world that we live in a world which obviously is now 24/7 available on every single device, there's something which is much more about who we are, how we behave, what we believe in, than it is only about where we are from. And I think particularly where the so-called younger generation, now honestly I lose track, I can't even remember, is it still Gen Z, have it gone back to A, is it B, whatever that current generation is that seems to change every 6 months. They know who they are, they know who they're connected to, they don't care if the person that they're connected to is from this side of the world, that side of the world, or from somewhere in space they've never even heard of, because it's about the connectivity points that they have that brings them together as people. And that's a crucial thing for us to remember. If we're going to spark creativity, that deep-seated empathetic understanding of the cultural nuances that really make people, especially younger generations today, tick, informed by the devices that they use, is actually much more important than any historical culture that in the past we may have thought of as a typical measure of their psychographic reality. A great example of this is this piece of work that was done actually by our sister agency, PhD, down in Australia for ANZ Bank. And it's self-explanatory when you see it, but just 20 seconds on the fact that this is what I mean. Even at, we talk about learning or truth coming from the mouths of babes. The youngest cultural connections sometimes are the most meaningful. And this, I think, is a beautifully creative piece of work, which is very simple, hits on a real cultural truth, and which really connects the dots no matter whether you're sitting in Australia, New Zealand, or anywhere in the world.
To mark International Women's Day today, a viral video out of Australia takes on the gender pay gap in just about the cutest way, if that's possible. They had boys and girls do some chores to earn pocket money, but just as it is in many workplaces, they paid the girls less than the boys.
If I was Prime Minister, I would make it illegal. Why does he get $5?
That's just the way it is.
It should be flat out illegal. I'm not joking. I'm not being unreasonable. Women and men should have the same money. They should have 50-50. 60-60 if you want to do 120.
If you do the same work, you should get paid the same money.
What we're trying to tell you is that it's not fair that boys get paid more than girls.
Maybe if the men noticed they were being paid more than the women, they should speak up about it.
When I am older, I'm going to make a change. If I don't forget. I have no words, it's so wrong.
And as a result of this, the hashtag Equal Future is now trending again just in time for International Women's Day today.
There you go.
Love that little guy. If I don't forget.
I don't forget.
Let's hope he doesn't.
Out of the mouths of kids.
And there's a lesson for us all. We all want to change the world if we don't forget. So let's kind of remind ourselves every day that actually, what we do can change the world. And within that context, again, I go back to empathy. You know, the whole idea of empathy is about wanting and feeling like you can change the world. You can change the world not as an individual, perhaps, but you can as a part of a wider collective. And we talked about culture earlier on. This is now about tribes. Now, tribes in the past, you know, and again, I'm as guilty as anyone. I've been talking about tribes for 20 years and talking about how powerful it is to understand tribes when you talk to consumers, and the fact that, you know, people who support Liverpool will cross the gender boundaries, the age boundaries, they'll cross cultural boundaries, etc., etc. And that's still true. But today I'm not talking about Liverpool supporters, thank God. I'm talking about a new kind of tribe. A new kind of tribe in the sense that you've all got phones. Some of you are looking at your phone right now. Thankfully, most of you are not looking at your phone, which is good. But those phones and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram, those are now the tribes that we feed on. Even the Liverpool fans, who were still Liverpool fans, are now Liverpool fans in a social tribe. They're communicating to each other, they're cheering on the Reds via their devices. And how we understand that and how we try to really make best use of those devices. How do we, you know, again, we talk about being, for example, mobile first and mobile led. What are we actually doing to really deliver creative work around that? How are we, more importantly, going back to my key topic today, how are we using the data signals that are available to us, the technology that's available to us, not to just be smart, but to be smart in a meaningful, engaging, creative way? How are we doing it to actually, I talked about solving McDonald's problems earlier on. How are we doing it to solve people's problems? How are we ensuring that we can, now that we understand that actually understanding tribes is an important aspect of being empathetic in your understanding of insights, how are we then using those data signals and those tribes that we have in the palm of our hand to actually make a difference to people's lives? Adidas did this brilliantly.
There
Can you get the
are
volume
a
up,
number
please?
of traffic signals in the major cities of the world. London, New York, Tokyo. They stop cars from crashing into each other, but they also stop urban runners from expressing themselves. They stop the free-flowing, pulse-racing, soul-releasing liberation of the unfettered true city run. So, Adidas created a completely new kind of urban run.
Green light run changes your perception of city running from a chaos to a world of gaming.
Working with Tokyo Police Department data, they calculated the cycle of every light in the city. Then, engineered an algorithm that ensured an Adidas green light runner need never stop because a traffic signal stood in their way.
10 seconds to the next green light. Choose the detour route.
Became a full-length street marathon through Tokyo, and it grabbed attention across the world. Because a runner should know no barrier other than their own athletic passion.
Do you know, every now and then, and I'm sure we'll have those moments, an idea comes along, you see something and you think, pardon my language, shit, I wish I'd done that. I wish that one of my people had come up with that. That is one of those ideas. Because this is the kind of stuff that is not only, I go back to those three words, imagination, innovation, invention. Ticks all of those boxes. But most importantly, it uses data to make a difference in people's lives, to get people moving in a real way. I'm running out of time here, so I'm actually going to skip the next video because let's face it, who really wants to hear any more about AI at the end of the day? So I'm going to skip on from that. And I'm going to really kind of come towards the end of what I want to say to you guys today. You know, we've seen some good work. Hopefully, you know, I've given you some insight into how we as an agency think, but I think more importantly, the importance of really questioning, challenging. If we're going to be empathetic, it starts by challenging, questioning, and saying, no, I need to know more, I can know more. The final point I want to make is that ultimately creativity is not killed by data. Creativity is not killed by technology. Creativity is not killed by media people. Creativity is killed when we only focus on the short term. When all we're thinking about is how am I going to move those short-term metrics, that needle along just a little bit. You know, I said up front that whilst the McDonald's campaign was fantastic, it's our own work, of course I'd say that, ultimately it was still something that was quite functional. We need to move beyond that. If we're going to really talk about creativity and empathy, we need to understand what their impact is on the longer term. And that brings us really full circle, and those of us who have been fortunate or unfortunate enough to actually have studied marketing, we talked over the years over and over and over about the importance of brand building, the importance of actually delivering the right kind of brand message, a longer term sustaining message. That hasn't changed. Brand metrics are still critical. Being able to look at the long term, and there's all kinds of studies I won't even bother quoting today, which talks about the power of building that longer term brand. To me, ultimately, what having an empathetic view to consumers allows us to do is to be able to build that longer term perspective. How are you able to really understand the lifetime value of a consumer if you only look at that consumer in the rearview mirror? And that's what most traditional data does for us. It talks to us in a rearview mirror sense. What did they do yesterday? What might that tell us about what they might do tomorrow? It's in your car, you look in the rearview mirror. We need to use data in a much more heads-up display way. What is it about our consumers that is telling us how we should navigate? Should we take this road or that road? How sharp is that next bend? Are there any obstacles in the way? That's how you build long-term brand value. That's how you build long-term customer value, is by asking those types of questions. Do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. I'm sure that all of you will have a lot more answers than I do in terms of how we go about doing that. But certainly that is a belief that we have. And so the last video, because it's already ticked, I'm being told that time is up. I feel like I'm at the Oscars and the band's about to start playing. But the last video which I will show you, because I think it's lovely, is a client of ours in Australia, Ancestry.com. They come to that, you know, with a little bit of your DNA, can trace your roots, where you came from, who you are, etc., etc. As it says on the slide, you know, they'd always focus their work on doubt response. How am I going to go out there and sell what I have? How am I going to say, you want to know this, don't you, and sell it based on that, until they realized it really wasn't working for them anymore. It had to be more emotive. It had to be much more understanding of the empathetic realities of the people they're talking to. And that's when we changed the approach completely and developed this.
She gave me a blessing. And was okay to search?
I would imagine how wonderful it would be to have that beautiful father-daughter relationship.
family now.
We found each other, hey?
What makes you uniquely you? You know, that lived, breathed because of the fact that we understood and realized people are curious about themselves, where they come from. And so my passing thought to you is my starting thought to you. No matter how the world evolves, no matter how it changes, how much tech there is, how much AI, ultimately, we are human beings. I go back to Maya Angelou. We are human beings who are living, breathing, feeling. And we want people to recognize the fact that we are curious, that we want to find out, that we want to learn. So we need to be curious in terms of how we bring that to life. As it says here, the creative spark is not in decline. We just need to embrace that which is around us to ensure that we're really enabling a different kind of more empathetic creativity. And do that with an eye always on the long term rather than the short term. So by my standards, I've actually done quite well. I'm only 3 minutes and 40 seconds over. Thank you so much. I think if I ask now for any questions, I'd be shot. So I'll be around. If you want to have a chat later on, let me know. I'm Stephen Lee. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.